on MarcusNews.com, scientific studies are proving once and for all what the healthiest diet in the world is. Not just for weight loss, but for actually reversing serious health conditions. Meet the doctor whose best-selling book and website is bringing this proof to the world. We have a really life-changing special show for you today. I'm in Bethesda, Maryland, right down the street from the National Institute of Health, but I don't care. I've got something much more interesting, much more exciting. Let's get right to the important facts here. More than half the deaths in the United States are from heart disease, cancer, and diabetes. Most of that is diet-related, and which means that almost all of it is preventable. Now, most people stubbornly refuse to either accept that because they're addicted to their foods and they don't want to change, or they just don't believe it. They need proof. Well, I've got the proof for you today. I am so excited. I flew all the way out here to interview this guy. He's a hero of mine, and he will be of yours too if you don't know about him yet, but you probably do. I'm so excited because this man has dedicated his life to proving what the healthiest diet in the world is. He has a website called nutritionfacts.org, which is made to prove to you scientifically and medically what the healthiest diet is. He wrote a New York Times best-selling book called How Not to Die. It's a pleasure to welcome today Dr. Michael Greger. Thank you for coming. It's an honor for you to have you here.
Thank you for coming. I'm right down the street, but thanks for coming all the way out here.
You are one of the most entertaining doctors I have ever seen. I love your lighthearted approach, and you actually make this fun. It's not just like some boring thing to be healthy. Most people are stuck in their ways, and they refuse to believe what we try to tell them about health and longevity. And a lot of you don't care about health, but you do care about staying young, looking and young and all that stuff, you know, for the vanity reasons. Fine, it's all connected. So if you want to stay young and you don't want to age as much, or if you just don't want to die, it's the same information. So let's get right to it. What is the healthiest diet?
The best available balance of evidence suggests that the healthiest diet is one centered around fruits, vegetables, legumes, which are beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, whole grains, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, mushrooms, basically real food that grows out of the ground. These are our healthiest choices, all while minimizing our intake of meat, eggs, dairy, and processed junk.
So plant-based.
Plant-based, a diet centered around whole plant foods. That's the secret.
So the big thing now is the keto diet, which is animal fats. I mean, sure, they're losing weight, which seems to be like the most important thing, but how is that in the long run from what you've...
Yeah, I mean, the goal of weight loss is not to fit into a skinnier casket, right? I mean, the most important thing, because diets by definition don't work, right? Because you go on them, you go off them. What we need is a lifestyle. What we need is a way to eat and live that we can eat and live for the rest of our long, healthy life. And to do that, thankfully, the same diet that is associated with longevity is the same diet that's so effective in controlling weight. In fact, that's the next book I'm working on currently, How Not to Diet, where I go through and compile all the science, not just on preventing, arresting, or reversing each of our top 15 killers, but also now moving on to controlling weight. And spoiler alert, it, in fact, may be a very similar healthy diet.
There's a lot of conflicting information out there backing up both sides. For example, there's information saying meat is good for you, eggs are good for you, dairy is good for you. And it's really confusing people because it seems to be like no matter what you believe in, you'll find proof to back it up on the internet. Now, your job is to weed through all that because the proof that meat is good for you is backed by the meat industry, right? The eggs are good for you is backed by the egg industry.
Yeah, so this is the classic kind of tobacco industry tactic. They were the ones, the tobacco industry really, it was their innovation to use science against itself, basically. They realized that, so this is, in the 40s and 50s, where, science was venerated, as it should be, as a way to kind of sift through what is and is not true, and there was this tremendous body of literature, starting in the 30s, but certainly by the 50s, that non-smokers had at least 90% less lung cancer than smokers, for example. An Adventist study coming out of California in 1958. So there was, by the time the Surgeon General's report in 1964 came out, they had 7,000 studies right? I mean, you'd think maybe after the first 6,000, they could have given people a little heads up or something amazing, but it was a very powerful industry. I mean, it took that much, that overwhelming massive evidence to finally get the powers that be to just recognize that smoking was killing people. And so the tobacco industry tactic, their kind of playbook, was to fund their own science. They have this Tobacco Institute. They fund their own scientists just to instill doubt. They knew they couldn't go up against the 7,000 studies. But in fact, there's this famous tobacco industry memo called Doubt is Our Product. This was a PR company saying, look, we don't have to convince people smoking is good for you. All we have to do is introduce enough doubt. Some scientists say tobacco is good, some say it's bad, so who knows? In hopes people just kind of throw their hands up in the air and do whatever's. And so the food industry is the same thing, right? So when butter is back on the cover of Time magazine, right? It sells a lot of magazines, but it sells the public short, right? But that's what the industry wants. I mean, they want coffee's good for you, coffee's bad for you. Hopefully people just throw up their hands, eat whatever's put in front of them, right? Which is good for the trillion-dollar processed food industry, but it's not good for the health and well-being of ourselves and our families.
So what proof do we have that meat and dairy is bad or not good for you?
Oh, well, the most powerful data are these interventional studies. And so we've long had, for example, you look at the longest, healthiest living populations around the world, the so-called blue zones. They're the most centenarians, most people live to over be 100. Whether it's the Okinawa Japanese, the Seven-Day Adventist vegetarians, or there's a place in Costa Rica.
Because people keep saying a lot of these people in the blue zones, they eat meat, they eat.
Oh, well, so what, the Venn, if you do a Venn diagram of all these blue zones, what they share in common is a plant-based diet, and specifically legumes. They all eat beans every day, beans, split peas, chickpeas, lentils every day. And so that should really, so for example, the Okinawa Japanese, the second longest living population in the world, they had 97% plant-based diet. The longest living population in the world, the Seventh-day Adventists, vegetarians around Loma Linda, don't eat any meat at all. So these are kind of population studies. Maybe they live so long because they also don't smoke, they exercise, and they wear their seatbelts, and right. So that's why we need interventional studies, where you take people, you randomize them into two groups, put them on different diets, and you actually see what happens, right? You kind of put it to the test, and so this was so for years, right? There's this population data. Oh, the healthiest population seem to eat this way. Okay, so for example, heart disease. So there were areas in the world like rural China and rural Africa where epidemic heart disease simply did not exist. Right? It's just not something people died of. You say, wait a second. That's the #1 killer of men and women here, right? So what were they eating? And so, but again, maybe there was something else about their environment that protected them from heart disease. So finally, what Ornish did in his famous lifestyle heart trial, published in July 23rd, 1990, was, okay, let's take people with heart disease, in fact, serious, life-threatening heart disease, randomize them into two groups. And one group told to just follow the advice of your doctor as to what to eat, which is basically do nothing, right? Then the other group, okay, let's put them on the same kind of plant-based diet followed by populations that do not get epidemic heart disease, in hope that maybe we can slow the disease down, perhaps even stop it. But instead, something miraculous happened. As soon as people stopped eating artery-clogging diets, their bodies were able to start dissolving some of that plaque away, opening up arteries without drugs, without surgery, suggesting their bodies wanted to be healthy all along, but were just never given the chance. One of the most amazing things I learned in all my medical training was that within about 15 years of stopping smoking, your lung cancer risk approaches that of a lifelong non-smoker. Isn't that amazing? Like your lungs can clear out all that tar, and eventually it's almost as if you never started smoking at all. Right? And every morning of our smoking life, that healing process starts until wham, first cigarette of the day. Re-injuring our lungs with every puff, just like we can re-injure our arteries with every bite. When all we had to do all along, the miracle cure, is just stand back, get out of the way, stop re-damaging ourselves, and let our body's natural healing processes bring us back towards health. Right? The #1 killer cannot just be prevented, arrested, but reversed with a plant-based diet. There's only one diet ever proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients of plant-based diet. Now, so anytime someone tries to sell you on some new diet, the keto diet or whatever, so do me a favor. Ask them one simple question. We say, has this diet been proven to reverse heart disease? Number one reason me and all my loved ones will die? If the answer is no, why would you even consider it? If that's all a plant-based diet could do, reverse the number one killer of men and women, shouldn't that kind of be the default diet until proven otherwise? And the fact that it's also so effective in preventing, arresting, or reversing other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming.
I agree. The thing that bothers me the most is people keep asking, what do I take for this? What do I take for that? And it's just, they're obsessed with a quick fix, just to take something. I said, the answer isn't what you take, it's what you stop doing. It's what you get rid of. It's like they want to hide the symptoms more than actually fix the problem.
I'd encourage people to give it a try. I think people, it's just unfathomable to people to think, oh, I'm never going to have a pepperoni pizza again. It's just like, there's just like, oh, if that's, well, then forget it, right? But they say, no. Look, give me 3 weeks, right? Look, 3 weeks, but all in, right? And look, you can do anything for 3 weeks. You could not eat anything for 3 weeks. Right? Okay. So, and people are like, okay, so try it as a free sample. Let's just see what happens, right? And then the hope is, and look, as a physician, I can do labs before and after. We can do all sorts we can get fancy testing. But, even just how people feel. The hope is that by the end of that 3 weeks, not only is their palate started to change, right? And so all of a sudden, healthy food actually tastes good. So you get the best of both worlds. Wait, it tastes good, and I get to live longer, right? That's what plant-based eating is all about. But all of a sudden they feel better. Even if they went in apparently feeling fine, a lot of people think just like, like chronic indigestion, constipation, these things are normal, like not sleeping good, not having energy, that's just life, right? No, but then 3 weeks later, right? All of a sudden, oh my God, I've never, my periods are better, whatever it is. Then all of a sudden, then you have that self-motivation, right? And then it's not somebody wagging their finger saying, eat this, don't eat this, right? All of a sudden, they have this internal signal, wow, right? Even if they don't take advantage of it right then, they know at the back of their mind, look, I can do this. It was probably a lot easier than they thought it was, right? Before going into it. And they know the benefits. Say, wow, if I feel this good after 3 weeks, imagine 5 years doing this kind of stuff, right? The proof, look, I can give you the mountain of literature, right, proving, but it's just that nothing tastes as good as healthy feels, and people that will just wow, all right. Let's do it.
It's human nature to see what you can get away with. They always want to keep one foot on this side of the door and one foot on this side of the door. And they're always trying to say, yeah, but can I still do this? So I'm going to ask a few questions that people are going to ask. Are eggs bad?
Well, when you ask whether food is good or bad, right? The response, there's only one real response, and that is compared to what, right? So are eggs good compared to the breakfast sausage next to it? Yeah. Compared to oatmeal, not even close, right? There's no contest, right? And so, foods aren't so much good or bad as they are better or worse, right? And so we can always shift. Every time we put something in our mouth, there's an opportunity cost. There's a lost opportunity to put something even healthier in our mouth. Like, are bananas good for you? Well, not compared to blueberries, right? But compared to a lot of other food, definitely. But look, if you're like, what am I going to put on my oatmeal? I could put blueberries or bananas, and then go for the blueberries. That's the healthier choice. And so we can all start shifting our diet.
But the big question with eggs is it's an animal product. Does it have cholesterol, heart issues?
Oh, it's the most concentrated source of cholesterol in the typical American diet. It's second only to brains. Brains have more cholesterol, but we don't eat a lot of brains.
You mentioned in your videos the choline and methionine.
Oh, yeah. So, we used to think that, heart disease was really it's like saturated fat cholesterol, which is still I mean, still certainly the case, but now we realize that there are other factors involved in the disease-causing properties of animal foods. Like, why are animal foods so bad? I mean, is it because they're missing all the good stuff in plants, like the fiber and the folate and the antioxidants? Or, are there these kind of toxic substances? So yeah, we've known about cholesterol-saturated fat going back half a century now. But, there's some new kind of, new things on the block, like TMAO, trimethylamine oxide. So when we eat carnitine, it was originally discovered on carnitine. So carnitine, which is found predominantly in red meat, these bad bacteria in our gut can turn carnitine into something called trimethylamine, which is oxidized by the liver into TMAO, wreaks havoc throughout the body, damages our arteries, and that can increase our risk for stroke and heart attack and heart failure and kidney failure, all sorts of bad stuff. Okay, but what's interesting, if you take a vegan, you feed him a steak, and you pay him enough to eat it, right? They don't make any TMAO. Why? Because it's the combination of the bad bugs plus the carnitine, right? Now, if you eat a steak every day, you'll develop those bad bugs, and then you'll start making. But that's just show. But you have a healthy enough gut flora, then they don't. You have fiber-eating bacteria, then they just make good stuff with what we eat. So anyway, then it was discovered. Choline does the same thing. Bad bacteria can take choline, which is found predominantly in eggs, also white meat and seafood and dairy products, make that same toxic TMAO stuff, which can circulate throughout the body and cause. But there's also heterocyclic amines and these cooked meat carcinogens, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. The pollutants, right? Think of it's the mercury in fish or the dioxins, the PCBs. These are bioaccumulative. So we want to eat low on the food chain, ideally. There's new 5GC there. I mean, you just go on and on down the list as to why these are not the healthiest choices.
Fish, people say, well, fish isn't really a meat.
Fish tree, there's some fish tree I don't know about. So I mean, if we had a time machine to go back before the Industrial Revolution,
right,
then it would be kind of a different story. But now, basically, I mean, the highest levels of toxic pollutants are found in the aquatic food chain. And that's because everything eventually flows into the sea. I mean, the oceans are humanity's sewers, essentially. And so, like, all the mercury spewed into the air by every, coal-powered, plant in China eventually settles down to the oceans. And so the highest levels of mercury, PCBs, dioxins, some of these, old organic chlorine pesticides like DDT all concentrate in up the aquatic food chain. And so then we're like the apex predator at the top, like the killer whales at the top, that have. And so look, if you're gonna eat fish, then look, like if you short-lived small fish like minnows, right? I mean, then I mean that. But again, there's better, worse, but. But there's.
Some people say, and I'm just trying to, I'm collecting comments and questions from people that, these are common ones that we get, and I'm just to get your thing on there. Some people say that when they went vegetarian, they had less energy and they had to go back to meat because they were told that they weren't getting enough iron or protein or B12.
I mean, you certainly not get enough B12, so B12 is critically important for anyone eating a plant-based diet. I mean, but it's something that takes months or years. I mean, you wouldn't just all of a sudden feel, But certainly long-term B12 deficiency can cause anemia, which can cause fatigue, also cause all sorts of other horrible problems. So it's critically important, a regular, reliable source of vitamin B12. I recommend 2,500 micrograms of cyanocolbulin, balm, the cheapest source once a week is all the B12 you need. It costs about $5 a year. So that's absolutely critically important. But probably one of the most common reasons people don't have energy switching diets is because they're just not eating enough food. I mean, so typically, we kind of are used to a certain amount of kind of volume on a plate. Like if you've been growing up bacon double cheeseburgers and milkshakes or something, like there's this much food on a plate, right? That's lunch or that's whatever. But you have to eat so much more if you're eating whole plant foods, right? Because they're so calorically dilute. There's a lot of food, relatively few calories for most foods. And so you have to eat a lot more food. So if you eat the same amount of food, like just a little bit bit of food, then I mean, you actually do calorie counts on some of these people, and so they're full after a meal, but they realize, oh, you're just not getting enough energy. You're not literally getting enough calories in the day. No wonder you feel this way. It's like people, on these crash diets, these like liquid fast diets. Of course, they have no energy, right? Because their body's like going into starvation mode. And so you just have to eat more food. And so they may have to eat more calorically dense foods like nuts, seeds, avocados, nut butters, dried fruit, these kind of things that really kind of pack calories in a small space. Or eat more frequently, like trail mix, that kind of things, eating snacks along the way.
But what about the eating meat for your blood type? It's funny because I'm supposed to be the type that eats meat. And my blood, I've been fine, and I know people that haven't eaten meat in 40 years.
It's just even to bring it up is to just. I mean, we all want to be open-minded, but not so open that our brains fall out. Basically, I mean, it's dietary astrology. It's like, oh, you should eat this because you're a Capricorn or something. It makes absolutely no sense. Yeah. I mean, there's no scientific basis. I have some videos on it where the people actually wasted some of their life to actually dig through it, and actually, I mean, it's just not worth it. It's ridiculous.
Another common argument is, well, Eskimos eat mainly meat, and there's no plant foods up there, and they've been around forever, but they actually don't live that long, do they?
Horrible health. They actually do eat some berries during one season, but no, they have terrible health. In fact, it's the only population I know of whose health actually improved upon the westernization of their diet. So like Twinkies showed up and they actually got healthier. I mean, that tells you how bad your diet is if once they kind of westernized their diet, once all this processed crap came to their diet, they actually had better public health statistics. I mean, that's how terribly sad. Now, it's not their fault. I mean, it's not like they're like, oh, I'll have the blubber over the kale. I mean, it's just like they just lived in an environment that wasn't supportive. Right. And of course, I mean, part of their public health statistics is that they're poverty-stricken. They have no resources. And I mean, I was just in Winnipeg. I was just speaking in Winnipeg last week. They talked about it. They asked about the Inuit, and it's like, can we get them good food? And they're like, there's no roads. Like, you have to like snowmobile out some. And it's like, well, get them. I mean, but so it's an access problem. But, yeah. I mean, so there was this kind of myth that Eskimos didn't get heart disease. But that's ridiculous. I mean, in fact, we have proof going back centuries. Why? Because when they die, they can get locked in the permafrost and mummified. And so we can actually do autopsies on centuries-old Eskimos and see, of course they're rife with atherosclerosis. All they're doing is eating animal fat.
The B12 issue, there's people that say, well, if you don't get B12 on a vegan diet, then obviously that's not the diet you're supposed to be on, because if it's naturally supposed to be, then B12 would be in the diet.
Well, I mean, it's just because the consequences of living in the natural world. I mean, so for example, vitamin D, right? The sunshine vitamin, right? I mean, we evolved running around naked in equatorial Africa, right? Now we wear clothes. Exactly. I mean, it's just so, and we live at northern climes, and during sometimes the years the sun rays are such an angle, we don't make enough vitamin D, and so we may have to supplement with vitamin D just because of the consequence, right? We wear shoes. Why do we wear? That's not natural. That's ridiculous. Why? Because I mean, that's actually advanced. I mean, we live in a modern world. There's, we used to be able to get all the B12 we needed, presumably drink out of a mountain stream or well water. Now we chlorinate the water. So B12 is not made by plants, not made by animals either. It's made by little microbes that blanket the earth. And so, but now we chlorinate the water supply to kill off any bacteria, right? And so we don't get a lot of B12 in our water anymore. We don't get a lot of cholera either. It's a good thing we have a sanitary, that we have a little hygiene in the world. And so, our fellow great apes get all the B12 they need, eating bugs, dirt, and feces. I prefer supplements. And so, it's just, this is the way we live in our modern world. We need to, to be smart about it.
And what about iron? That's a big one that people keep asking about.
Yes, there's iron in beef, protein in pork, dairy, calcium in dairy. But food is a package deal, right? You must realize. So as much as Burger King says have it your way, you can't be like, yeah, can I get the burger? But, hold the saturated fat, hold the cholesterol, hold the hormones. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. It comes all together, right? So why get your iron? So if that was the only way to get iron, right, then you can make an argument. But no, in fact, most iron is actually found in plant foods. And it's found in a non-heme form, which is safer because your body can actually regulate how much iron you're getting. So when you get our nutrients from whole plant foods, instead of the baggage that comes along with it, you just get it like a bonus. So by eating, getting calcium in dark green leafy vegetables, for example, then you get the fiber and the folate, potassium, all these things, missing, right? So you get iron, for example, in dark green leafy vegetables that you wouldn't get in dairy. And so then you get kind of the best of both worlds. And so, legumes, for example, perfect example, where they have the things you'd expect in kind of protein foods, the kind of stereotypical protein foods like, iron and zinc, but also have all these vegetable kingdom nutrients, right? Fiber, folate, potassium. So you get the best of both worlds when you eat beans. So that's a healthy source of protein. Healthy source of iron. That's where we should get our nutrients. And the food industry loves this kind of nutrientism, right? So that's why they can sell you Fruit Loops with vitamin D or with fiber or whatever, right? So then they can basically spray a multivitamin onto multicolored marshmallows and get parents to serve it to their kids for breakfast. Right? It's because of this nutrient mindset, as if like the only way we could get nutrients is through Fruit Loops, as opposed to, well, wait a second, where do they, right? This is healthier sources for all these nutrients.
I get asked this all the time, and it's kind of funny, but and I tell people, but I want you to say it because this is a guy in a white lab coat. They trust them a lot more than some radical California hippie dude. How come a lot of vegetarians and vegans are overweight and unhealthy?
Oh my God, you could eat Coca-Cola is vegan, potato chips are vegan, French fries are vegan. You could eat an abysmal vegan diet, right? As a physician, when someone says they're vegan, vegetarian, that just tells me what you don't eat, right? It doesn't actually tell me that, do you actually eat vegetables? Right? That's why I prefer the term whole food plant-based nutrition, because that actually tells me what you do eat, and that you're getting some of these healthiest foods into your daily diet.
There's junk food versions of any diet.
Absolutely. The food industry, they'll give you low-carb junk food, they'll give you low-fat junk food, they'll give you paleo junk food, they'll sell you any kind of gluten-free junk food, any kind of junk food you want, anything, so that you won't actually shop in the produce aisle.
You find research studies that go back a long time. What about the people that say, well, yeah, but mankind, when the caveman, the paleo and all that, they were eating animals. That was natural. That was natural. Maybe because we're modern now, it's different. But back then, we were designed to eat meat.
Okay, so they're talking about the Paleolithic period. It goes back about 2 million years. But we have been... we separated from our last great ape ancestor 20 million years ago in the Miocene era, right? So for the first 90% of our evolution, so from 20 million to about 2 million years ago, we were eating what the rest of our fellow great apes eating, which are plant-based diets, right? So we were designed, our biochemistry, our organ systems, we were all designed to basically eat, leaves and fruit all day. And in fact, so much so we lost the ability to make vitamin C. Most animals make their own vitamin C. They don't have to eat any fruit at all. But we were just stuffing ourselves with so much vitamin C that our body just junked the DNA to produce vitamin C. Why do we need it? We're getting it. Why waste energy making vitamins? Our physiology very clearly designed to a plant-based diet, although we may have an advantage by chewing on bone marrow and brains and getting those extra calories, right? We evolved in the context of scarcity, of famine. It was all about, we just need to live long enough to pass along our genes, right? To get to reproductive age. And anyway, if you time machine back some Twinkies, that tribe of Neanderthals would outcompete everybody else because they would live, right? That's what they, right? Because we just need to live to reproductive age, pass along our genes. Twinkies will do that for you. But look, what was the age where people were dying in their 20s, right? Now, we're dying from chronic diseases, right? Heart disease, cancers, diabetes, high blood pressure. These are diseases that you get later in life, and we know we don't have to speculate we have these interventional studies that have proven what the healthiest diets are, and anybody who I mean, then it's just like, well, look, the studies have already been done. It's not like a century ago we're like, wow, we should do these studies, see what diet's best. The science is in. In fact, you can go to truehealthinitiative.org. It's started by David Katz at the Yale Prevention Research Center, where he just pulled together hundreds of the top nutrition researchers in the world, because the industry loves this confusion. Be like, no, it's not confusion. There's decades of scientific consensus, like the global warming debate, like climate change. Like, climate scientists agree. Like, there's a scientific consensus on that matter. There's just some basic tenets. There's some facts. Like, we've been there, done that, and that's a diet centered around whole plant foods. And so True Health Initiative, they agreed, hundreds of the top nutrition scientists in the world agreed to a consensus statement as to what healthy eating and living is.
In your findings, because you do a lot of you have a whole team of people doing research around the clock to prove to people, the disbelievers, they want proof, you're giving them proof. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff you have to weed through, which tests, because like I said, the egg industry, the meat industry, the dairy industry manufactures their own proof.
Look, the blueberry industry does it too. I mean, you know, the raisin board, the kiwi fruit people, they fund their own studies. You always have to look at those studies with extra skepticism, because you realize that they're funded, and you know, when studies are funded by a corporate entity, they're dramatically more likely to conclude, you know, with funder-friendly conclusions. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad study, but you just have to look at it. You have to look at the methods. You have to, how did they do the study? Did they do the study to get some kind of desired result? And so, you know, these studies like funded by the nut industry that, you know, they say, you know, nuts are really healthy compared to like candy bars, or compared to like cookies or something. Anything it looks healthy compared to cookies, that's a ridiculous study. Nuts are really healthy. You don't have to compare them to. In fact, by comparing them to cookies, it makes it sound like, wow, you have so little science on the healthfulness of nuts, you got to put it up against cookies. I mean, that's a standard drug company tactic, where you have a new drug, and so you pit your new drug against some drug that's terrible, and then makes your drug look really good, as opposed to, you know, the best drug on the market.
So do you run personally up against, because the theory, the paranoia is that anybody in the medical field who stands up against the standard medical field is an outcast, is a rebel, is don't trust him. How are you looked at for people that are prescribing? I mean, most doctors prescribe drugs to hide symptoms. You're telling people to eat fruits and vegetables and not take drugs. So are you running up against heat from the industry?
Mostly it's just ignorance. I mean, you know, look, I mean, if, you know, I definitely in the kind of alternative, I don't know, whatever you want to call them, this kind of, the kind of alternative and natural approaches to health movement, there's this real and well-deserved skepticism, right, among the medical community. But you realize, I mean, as someone who comes from that world, you know, look, if doctors just want to make money, they would become stockbrokers or something. People go into medicine, at least in the beginning, because they want to help people, right? They want to, you know, they want to take care of sick people. Now, after, you know, being, you know, brutalized in medical training, often they come out on the other end demanding reparations and buying their BMWs and all that. Okay, so there's definitely a shift. But, you know, I think most people go into medicine with this real kind of idealistic good intentions, right? And yes, I can get beaten out of them, and, you know, they can get kind of brainwashed by big pharma along the way. But when I present, but look, they weren't taught about the power of nutrition to affect disease, right? And look, medicine is great for many kind of acute conditions, break a leg, put a cast on it. Okay, but when it comes to chronic disease, which is about 80% of what walks in the door in primary care practice, and that's, drugs have very little to offer, right? Pills and procedures, right? Because these are lifestyle diseases largely. And so unless you treat the cause by changing the lifestyle, you're not going to affect the course of disease. We can slow down your diabetes. We can slow down the rate at which you go blind and go on dialysis and you know, and get your lower limbs amputated. But we're not going to actually reverse the disease unless you reverse the cause of disease. But look, the doctors, were they ever taught this in medical school? Of course they weren't taught this in medical school.
How much nutritional information or training does a doctor get in his 7 years of practice?
So the average is down to about 24. So 24 hours in thousands of hours of preclinical instruction.
24 hours?
Yeah, 24 hours period.
In 7 years of medical practice?
Well, in all medical training. And of course, there's not much in continuing medical education, afterwards postgraduate medical education. And this is out of thousands of hours of instruction. We're getting about an average of 24. So only about a quarter of medical schools actually have an official kind of designated course in nutrition. And most of that isn't even clinical nutrition. It isn't actually using nutrition to actually help disease. It's Krebs cycle and biochemistry of vitamins. I mean, stuff that's kind of useless for medical practice. And so, look, they get off, they just don't know, right? So you can't fault doctors for prescribing drugs when that's all they were taught to do. And when you present this data, the most common reaction is one of, it's reigniting that spark on why they went to medicine in the first place. They want to see people get better. It is very depressing and dispiriting to practice medicine in today's world, because everything coming in the door, right? 80% of coming in the door, these chronic diseases you do very little for. Your diabetic patients come in, they don't get better. Your heart disease patients, they don't get better. They get worse, 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 and you die. How depressing is that? They're just going to be worse the next time. And you give them drugs to try to slow down the rate at which they get worse. You give them more drugs to counteract the side effects of the first drugs you give them. I mean, how it's terrible to see families going through that, and all of a sudden you're giving them a tool missing from their medical toolbox. You can actually make people get better, right? And the only happy doctors these days are like obstetricians. They're delivering babies. Like everybody else, miserable, right? And so here they are. They have this new tool. All of a sudden, you want to go to the office every day because you can actually make people get better. They were better now than they were 6 months ago. That doesn't happen in medicine. That's exciting. There's also a lot of my patients aren't going to do it. I can't even get my patients to stop smoking. You expect me to get them to start eating salad or something. But that's not your choice. Right? That's a very patronizing attitude, right? So basically, I'm not even going to bring it up because I know they're not going to do it. What? Look, it's their body, their choice. If they want to keep smoking or go bungee jumping, do whatever they want, look, that's up to them. But as physicians, we need to share with them the information that, look, people in your circumstance that do X, Y, and Z, these are the likely outcomes. And so if you don't want to, so by stopping smoking, you dramatically decrease your risk of lung cancer, et cetera. If you start eating healthier, this is what's going to happen. And, we're otherwise squandering these opportunities to save people's lives. The good news is that we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity. The vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a plant-based diet and other healthy lifestyle behaviors. So, it's good news. We have the power. As more doctors learn, before, the medical profession had a monopoly on information, right? And so the tobacco industry could control the AMA. They gave them a $10 million check, and all of a sudden the AMA refused to endorse the Surgeon General's report against smoking. I wonder why. Control the AMA, you control the doctors, you control the message, right? But now there's been a democratization of information. Now on the internet, people can get access. You don't have to, you can bypass, right? Back then what were you supposed to do? Encyclopedia Britannica? I'm like, well, but now people can get access to information, and of course there's lots of dreck on the internet, but you hope the truth will kind of float to the surface. And when people experience it themselves, right? Those are the true believers, right? When I am invited to speak at all these, prestigious institutions, it's usually because someone on the inside, right? Usually one of their patients. It was the patients teaching the doctor. One of the patients all of a sudden got better. That's not supposed to happen, right? All of a sudden they got, and they said, "What did you do?" And the patient, I tried this diet, I feel so much better. And the doctor's thinking in the back of his mind, I got 5,000 people just in your circumstance, right? Right? Oh my God, right? And all of a sudden, they're helping people, and their life is transformed, and their patients' lives are transformed, the whole community is transformed, and so they are, so they bring me in, or they, start changing the whole system from within. It's really exciting. And so that's why, people are like, I want to find, can you find me a good, plant-based doctor? It's like, no, we don't need you seeing plant-based doctors. We need you seeing right? We need you going to the, straightest allopath pills and procedures person so you can show to them the power of diet. The plant-based docs already know about the power, right?
Well, this is great. I'm thankful for you for you know, like there's a lot of people for the last 40 years that have been like the radical hippie, whatever, vegan. People look at those as like nutcases, but any guy with a lab coat and a plaque on the wall that went to medical school and actually studied scientific testing, they listen to them, they trust them, which is why I have you on the show, because you are the real thing, and people trust somebody who not only studies medical scientific testing, but it actually looks at where the source of the test came from, and you have this neutral position. You're not biased by anything. You have your .org website is not, you're not selling products, it's not about money, you actually want the truth, and you're sharing it with people, which is a fabulous thing, and I'm thankful for that. Presenting physical hard proof, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of reason. This is what they should be teaching in medical school more than anything. So I'm thankful for you being a leader, spearheading this. Everybody's telling them things from all different angles. This is good, this is bad. And people's heads are swinging, well, then they don't even change at all. It's just too much.
Exactly, which is the whole point. I mean, that's the confusion. I mean, that's what the industry loves that, right? But yeah, we accept no, corporate sponsorship, strictly not commercial, not selling anything. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We'd like to have a Wikipedia model where we just reach so many millions of people. If 1 in 1,000 people kicks in a few bucks, like that's all our expenses paid for right there, right? All the proceeds I receive from all my books and DVDs and speaking engagements all goes to charity, right? So it's really just about me wanting to help people out there. I mean, my own family was, changed by Pritikin, who cured my grandmother of end-stage heart disease, and I want to do for everyone's family what Pritikin did for my family. It's really just about getting the information out there. It's not about the credentials or the white coat or the degrees. It's about the science. It's about what does the best available balance of evidence say right now. And that's my whole life, is just here's the mountain of evidence. Let me just share that with you, and not just cite the evidence, cite some study, but actually show you the study. Like you look at our nutritionfacts.org videos, it's just here's the study, here's the quote, here's the graph, here it is, and here's the links to all the PDFs. Read those, study yourself. It's like, right? I mean, it's amazing to me that, when I ask patients, they're like, why are you eating the way you're eating, right? People are like, someone at the gym said, that this is, I'm like, what? Right? Or, something they read at the checkout counter or something. It's like, look, if there's any decision in your life to make based on evidence, it should be the health and well-being of yourself and your family, right? Look, if you want to buy some toaster online, then yeah, the opinion of some random stranger, right, may be useful for you. But when it comes to like the health of your children, you can't just be, right? If there's any decision, it should be based on science, should be based on actual evidence. Should be, if we're going to put any work into any decision, that should be it. And it's not, he said, she said. It's what does the science say? We now have decades of data. And it's just a matter of bringing that to light. I mean, you're never gonna see an ad on TV for sweet potatoes, right? On the Super Bowl, there's just because there's no profit to be made. Produce goes bad; it's perishable, right? And it's like the worst from a profit perspective. Right? You want a Twinkie that sits on the shelf for a few weeks, right? I mean, it's just like and even a broccoli grower's not going to put an ad on TV for broccoli because you'll buy their competitor's broccoli. It's not a branded product. It's like the whole system is set up to undermine people's health, not get the good information out there. So look, the studies on broccoli get done. It's just no corporate budget driving its promotion. There's no press release on it. So someone just needs to take the science and bring it to the people, and that's what I try to do.
Well, thank you for doing that. The site is nutritionfacts.org, and your book is How Not to Die. And they can get that online. The internet's changed everything. Now that information is so readily available for free for anybody, and you're helping weed out the crap from the truth, which is great. And so thank you. Thank you so much for existing, and for giving people that end of it. I could say anything I want to people, but you're the guy that's proving it. So I think this is a great team work that we're creating here, and I hope more people hop on the bandwagon and help share this information. So thank you. Thanks for coming, and I really appreciate it. I hope we can do more stuff in the future.
Fantastic. Look, all my work is for naught if there aren't people out there like you in the trenches actually doing this and spreading the word and getting this out into people's hands and giving them the tools, right? I can tell people to eat kale, right, all I want, but unless someone can actually make it taste good, make it right, together We will save some lives.
Thank you. Thank you. Subscribe to this channel for the most powerful, life-changing information on health, money, relationships, and living the life you deserve.